Okay, thought what we'd do with this is a little bit unusual really is to go through a little bit of a video assembly for the new EggBot. What we're looking at here is this is a motor frame. These are the two frames fit together. So the basic assembly is what you would start with your motor frame, and then effectively your motor fits inside the frame. This motor's got the encoder on the back, which isn't the motor you use in this. It's a standard puller motor, so it does just slot in and push through there. And then you've got two little M3 screws, 6mm screws that go in through there that hold this motor in quite solid. Once you've fitted the motor, you can then fit the flange. No, actually, before you fit the flange, what I would say is I would attach the drive gear and the flange. The drive gear and the flange fit with these four little screws. They self-tap into this. About 8mm countersunk M3 screws will attach this to this. And then once you've got that together, you can screw the motor in. You can pop this drive motor on. And what you do is stick in a couple of either M3 set screws or grubs just to go through there and to grip the main drive to the shaft. Once you've done that, you can then slide the shaft into the main frame, which is like this. So there you go. So that's your main frame, and then it's a matter of just popping in the bearings. Now there's 4 bearings, and these go in each of the corners, and they are 15 by 24 by 5, so they're 15mm diameter on the inside, 24mm on diameter on the outside, and 5mm deep. So there you are. Then you've got your 4 pieces in there, and then what you can start to add next is the wheels. So each of the wheels come in 2 parts. So this is the part with the longer shaft. And then what you've got is another wheel that goes on the other side, and there's a little bit of a recess, which I'll just see if I can hide that one, so you can see that this wheel slots into there. You've got 2 screws, and what I would advise is probably putting about 50mm screws that will go right the way through that shaft, just to strengthen the plastic shaft. Put 2 screws in this side, go right the way through. One thing to watch out when you're assembling these is make sure that these faces are directly aligned. This thing can go on 2 ways, and what would happen if it didn't go in the right way? Those 2 wouldn't be aligned, so make sure they're aligned when you're actually assembling that. When you've got this in place, then you should see that this gear here meshes very nicely with this gear here, so you've actually then got that main part assembly. It's then just a matter of repeating the same at the back, so you can see that the back goes on, and effectively then what you've actually got is you've got your main assembly. Now on top of that, you've then got your tracks. Now the tracks, which I'll just fire in at the moment, the tracks are 30 pieces of these. I printed these in flex, about 3 or 4 layers on the outside, about 15% infill, and what you do is you literally put one track next to the next track, and in the hole in between you put some little rods. Now the rods are, I think, let me just double check on this, the rods are 55, yeah, so the rods are 50mm long and 2mm thick, and you can get brass 50 by 2mm rods, which are used for helicopter RC, and all you do is pop one of those in each of that and effectively make your track up. When you've got 30 pieces in, leave the last rod out so you've not made the loop, and when you're ready to assemble, what you do is you put the tracks on there. But we're not going to do that just at the moment, because I'll just talk through some of the other little bits we've got on there. So when you do your final assembly, there's a couple of rod plates, one which fits on here and one that fits on here. So once your motor's in there and it's slotted in, you'll see that there's some holes at the bottom. What you actually do is you put a rod plate on, and again in here these are M3 countersunk bolts, and pretty much sort of 15-20mm. That distance between there and there is 14mm, so 15mm one just fits very nicely and will hold that plate on and hold this plate on. And the way the bolts go is they'll go through and they'll start to self-tap into the inner part of the plastic. On the top one it's a little bit tighter, because what we're actually doing, if you can see there, is we're using these 2 plates that will squash together so that they'll hold a rod in place. So once you've got to this stage, leave this top one loose, tighten this one up. That's your drive completed, and all you do that is you repeat exactly the same for the other side. So that's your main drives completed. Then what you can do after that then is you can start to put in the skirt, and I'll just take you through the skirt as an assembly. So this is the assembled skirt all together. Now the way this works when it's all attached, and again I'll talk through how we build it up, is you can see that there is a cover, a plate on this side, a cover, a plate on this side. There's a 2mm gap between the wheels and here, so that they can run freely, because these obviously move, these outer plates don't. This outer plate here is screwed in with 4 bolts here, and again 6 or 8mm ones will work fine. They just self-tap into those plates to hold that plate on. This plate goes on last, but what you effectively do is you assemble your skirt, you put your rods through your skirt, and these rods here go through so that they are flush with this part here, so they're just flush here. Now the length of these rods is 365mm, so think of Office 365 or however you want to remember it, but 365mm from one rod to the other rod. I got 400mm rods, they're 6mm in diameter, and effectively I just cut them down, so quite easy. So what you do with in here, and I'll just show you the other side, I'll just flip the other side on so you can see how the other drive goes, because I think I've got the other spacer on there, just to show you what we've got. So as you can see on here, so the way these drives fit on, the drives fit in, the rods come in, the rods come flush with that end, and then what you do is there's these little spacers. So one of those fits on each side of the rods, and they keep the distance between this frame and this inner frame. So one spacer goes on there. They've got, you can't quite see it on there, but there's a little flat plate on the bottom, which means that they'll only fit on one way. Then what you do is you slide these inner plates onto those 2 rods. You then slide the skirt onto those rods. You then slide your next inner plate. You then slide 2 more of those spacers on here, and then finally you slide your last drive onto there, and that is effectively your main drive assembled and complete. And then finally you can then put once you've got to that position, you can put both sets of your tracks on, which you've printed and looped together, and once you have put your tracks on, you can then actually attach the outer plates for the drive units, the little detailed ones that we talked about before. So that's these kind of things here. And then once you've done that, effectively that is your drives pretty much complete, and your skirt drive complete. So just pop the other one, if I can find it, drive A, drive B, there we go. So what you'll end up with is an assembly like this. Now I'll just talk a little bit about the skirt. The skirt's 2 versions of the skirt. There's one which prints as a single print, and there's another one which is a 2-part one. So if I just show you how the 2-part skirt works. 2-part skirt works like that. If you've built my models before, you'll know that I tend to use 10mm by 3mm set screws or grub screws. They go into these alignment holes here, 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 and here. So for the skirt, you need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those little set screws. And they're loose, so they're not tight, and the reason for that is I use 2-part epoxy pushed into the holes, put the set screws in, and then put the plate, the other side of the plate on it, and it squishes it all together, and it's not just a glue hold, it's also a mechanical hold. Once you've got it into this position, if you're doing the 2-part skirt, there's these which are the little skirt connectors. So all you do with those is there's 4 of those you print out, and you literally just gently tap those into these 4 areas, and they're kind of like dog bone shaped, and they pull it together, so it becomes a very rigid, very solid build. So effectively at that stage you've now got the main build done for the drive. Okay, let me just now talk you through the body. I'll show you how the body goes together. Whoops. And then once the body's gone together, we can so the body is a very simple print. I'll just take the aerial off. So on the body, all you've got, the body itself is a single print, so no supports needed. There is a separate piece which is this vent that just prints and slots into there. You should be able to print that stood up in that direction. The only bit of kind of overhang you've got a little bit is on this corner here. The rest should print and bridge relatively cleanly. So if you want to put a little bit of supports under there, you can do. Or what I tend to do is print it and then just give it a bit of a clean up afterwards. But that's effectively the vent. And all your vent is just so you can clean it, and what you can do is pop it in. And what the vent does on the inside then, and you'll see there's a little screw hole at the bottom, is this gives you a bit of a space if you want to mount a speaker. So that you can give it sound at a later date with an external vent so the sound can get through. The body itself consists of a body and two shoulders, so I'll just take the shoulders off so we can see. Similar to the skirt, we've got 4 holes for these M3 times 4mm grub screws and a little hole in the middle, so all you do really is pop 4 grub screws, coat the inner part of the shoulder with a little bit of 2-part adhesive, epoxy adhesive, push it in, put a screw, it self-taps in, and that'll just hold it very tight and just make sure that it's square to the side. And you repeat the same on the other shoulder, and effectively then that's your main body assembled with your vent. Your body itself attaches through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws, and then that's effectively your body assembled. So the next thing to look at after we've assembled the body is a Lazy Susan. So this has got printed Lazy Susan. It looks a little bit complex when you see the CAD, but what we'll do is we will take it to bits and I'll just talk you through how it's actually assembled. So what you've got in the first instance is you have this base unit here. Again, it prints this way up, no supports, and you can see that's the inner track for the bearings. This uses 5mm balls. Now you can get plastic balls, Delwyn balls, whichever kind of ones you want in there. All you do is you just want some 5mm ball bearings. I wouldn't tend to use metal because they will wear the plastic a little bit, but again, they will work. You just add a little bit of extra weight and a little bit of extra wear. So once you've printed this, just ignore the body at the moment. Once you've printed this, what you then do is take your upper Susan and pop your upper Susan on top. And you'll see it kind of half spins round at this stage. Now keep them together, hold them tight together, and what you want to do is start to feed 5mm bearings in through that hole. So you just feed them through. It takes about 110, 115 bearings to go all the way around the outside. And what you want to try and do is get them in, let it spin. Use a little bit of white lithium grease in there, which will smooth it down, and if you want to sand the tracks as well, just to make it a bit smoother, you can do. Once your bearings are in, you've got a little Susan plug, which if I just show you what that looks like, just a little print like this, and what that really does is it pops into there and it just seals that hole, and you've got 2 little self-tapper screws in there, which if you look at the distance, you've actually got 10mm if you wanted to put in there. I tend to use 6 or 8mm self-tapper screws to hold those in, and then effectively that's your Lazy Susan assembled. What you have got in the middle bit is I've got some mountings here for slip rings. Slip rings are all different sizes, but there's 4 screws on there, so there's various mounting brackets that we can make for those slip rings. So the slip rings allow you to take power from inside the body and to move this up. Now to access the in part of the dome, if we just take off this upper Susan here, all you really need to do, actually rather than take it, I'll show you what we need to do. All you really need to do with the upper Susan is with the dome off, you can spin this Susan around like that, and so what you've kind of got with that aligned is you've got this space here which allows you to put motors in, batteries in, and just generally access what's in there. If you really need to, you can take the 4 screws and get it out, but you should have good reasonable access through there. You'll see on the top part of the Susan then there's 6 holes here. These are for magnets, the rare metal magnets, the very strong ones. They're 6mm wide, 6mm deep, but what they'll do is they'll take 5mm by 5mm cylinder style magnets, and they'll go 1 into each hole. You'll also see on the inner part this little hole here which is 4mm. So the way it works is your magnets hold the dome down, and then what you've got is some little pins, and what I'll do is I'll just show you how the dome actually goes in on those. Okay, so the dome itself has this plate that glues inside the dome, and it obviously has the other side of the magnets here, which you put in there. Well, then what you do is you put some little self-tapper screws in through there. This isn't quite a line, but what happens is the self-tapper screws here go in through there and stick out slightly at the bottom. So when the dome is pushed on and the magnets are properly aligned, it will go in through that there. And that depth between there and there is 7.5mm, so you can probably get 5 or 6mm. You don't need a lot of stuff sort of poking through there. It's just enough to hold this in place. So once you built your Lazy Susan, the next thing to do is to attach your motor. So the motor fits in the inside of there. So if I just quickly take the body out, so we can see from underneath what we're actually doing. And what we've got, I'll show you how the motor fits. There's a small bracket which you'll find for the motor and the motor itself. And the way the motor fits in is the motor from this side self-taps into this bracket, and this bracket from this side self-taps onto that top bit there. So that's just on one side. It's purely because without this bracket, these little hobby motors have this thing that's stuck out in the middle, so it's just to bridge the gap on that, if you like. So that's one bracket on there. The other one, you put 2 bolts in here. The distance you've got between that plate and this plate here is 21, so you probably want 25mm bolts that go through there, and you can put some nuts underneath that hold that really solid. That's how your motor goes in, and then popped on top of your motor is your motor drive gear. Now what I would probably recommend is that you fit the motor drive gear before you push the motor in. You can squeeze it through that gap, because what it's got is it's got a couple of little self-tapper holes there and there which allow you to screw that into the plate. If you just push it in, it'll pretty much hold, but that just holds it a bit more securely. At that point then you've got your motor. Obviously you can have 2 cables here which you go to a motor controller through remote control that allows that top piece to spin. Okay, so if we bring back the body now, the final thing then is using M3 screws, probably 10mm will do. Self-tap 1, 2, 3, 4, and that will hold your overall dome onto your body. So that point then you pretty much got the main build. From a cabling perspective and wiring perspective, obviously within the drives you have your motor on the inside. You'll see that there's a little hole here where the cable can go through. On the inner plates you will see there's a little hole here so that the cable can continue. There's a hole in the skirt here so that the actual cable itself will come out just in through here into here, which you can then again use as standard RC motor controllers. I'm using Polarloo 20.4:1 high powered 25mm motors, and they'll draw probably about 5 amps when they're stalled, so you'll get away with a 5 amp motor controller, or 10 amps or something like that. DC motor controller, ideally dual channel, so that you can run sort of a tank style droid on there. Once all of that's together, the final part really then is just the dome. Now I've still a little bit of work to do on the dome, but if we pop the dome back on, I will just show you what the dome consists of. So the dome's fairly simple, to be honest. Let me just take everything out away from this apart from the dome. The beauty of CAD, you see, we can just hide things and make things disappear. Right, so in the dome, what we have is the dome itself here, and a dome ring. So if I hide the dome plate, when you print the dome you'll see there is a 45mm little ledge there. So if you can look at the bottom of it, you can see it goes in a little bit thicker. That ledge is designed so that you print the dome plate out, which looks a bit like this. The dome plate has 6 magnets on, which correspond to the Lazy Susan. Make sure you get the get the orientation of the magnets correct so they attract and not repel. Otherwise we've got some real problems. You pop your little screws in there, which are alignment screws. Once you've done all that, make sure the alignment screws are in, make sure the magnets are in and the magnets are attracted to Lazy Susan. Once you're happy with that, what you then do is take that plate and you glue it into the main dome. Okay. Now at that stage, then it's just a matter of adding all the pieces. I'm still just working on the rest of the greebles, but broadly I'll show you kind of how they all go together. So when you print the dome looks like this. You've got a few parts then that sort of fit in, so there'll be a printed eye, standard eye like that. You can put a plastic one on there if you wanted to put a clear one, if you wanted to mount a camera on the inside. There's all sorts of kind of options that you've got around there, but I'll give you a printable eye if you want to do. There is a little PSI style light on there, which again I'll do some mounts on the back so you can stick LEDs and whatnot that's on there, and then there's a little sort of a hollow projector style, fixed hollow projector style that will just slot into there, and again if you want to put lights on that we can do, and then there's a couple of slots here and here and here, which again little banks of LEDs we can use to light those up. So there's quite a lot of lighting opportunities on this dome. This dome is exactly 50% scale of a standard R2 dome, so all of the Mark III domes that we've got will fit these quite nicely. And then really it's just a matter of finishing off. I'll do a couple of aerials. They may not look exactly like that because I'm still just finishing that sort of CAD off at the moment. But all in all, that's pretty much how your dome is done. Once your dome's complete, all it really does then is it obviously drops onto the main body, and then you can lift it off and through magnets to get access to the main piece. You can put a switch in there so you switch it off and on, you know, etc, etc. So really that's pretty much the EggBot, which is a nice little cute Easter release. The drive's pretty cool, it's pretty rapid, it's fast, it's great fun to drive around. The dome and sound and lights, there's lots of opportunities to kind of experiment with this, and doing custom domes on it also works really cool. I know somebody asked if you could fit a drinks cart on here. I'm not sure you could. I'm guessing you probably could get something that would fit on here and carry drinks. But yeah, just wanted to quickly share the assembly of that over 22 minutes, and hopefully that was useful. Thank you.